It's Joe Manchin up against Mike Pence in this hypothetical 2024 matchup. Today on Political Excess, we're going to go through each state and see who would win. So let's get right into it. Safe states are over a 10-point margin, likely 5 to 10 points, lean under 5 points, and tilt 1 point or less. So how do I see this one going? Well, there's a few different factors here. Joe Manchin, he's still a Democrat. He's the lightest Democrat in the Senate. Progressives are not going to turn out for him. And even the Democratic base, a lot of them are going to stay home because they're put off by Joe Manchin and his little bit more conservative voting record. Plus, he has no charisma. He's not exciting whatsoever. But on the other hand, Mike Pence, a lot of the Trump base, they're going to stay home. They don't want to come out for Mike Pence. Pence will do well, of course, with evangelicals, a lot of southern states. He's definitely going to be too far to the right, not populist enough for some of the states that Trump won. So considering all those factors, some of the margins in the deep blue and the deep red states will be reduced because the turnouts are just not going to be there. But the close states, the purple swing states, those will probably benefit someone like Joe Manchin. The independents there probably do view him as more palatable than someone like Mike Pence. I think the working class appeal is going to be a wash. I think they're both going to do fine with their own establishments. So let's jump into this here and start in Alaska. Now, Donald Trump won this by over 10 points. I do have it as a safe for Mike Pence, but I would not be surprised if this did get down under 10. So you could put it at likely, but I did put it at safe. Hawaii will be very safe for Joe Manchin. Pretty much any Democrat is going to win in Hawaii by over 10 points. Back up to the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California. I think the margins would be reduced because they're blue states. They're not going to really come out for Joe Manchin. They're definitely not going to come out for Mike Pence. A small percentage probably would be more amenable to Mike Pence because he did stand up to Donald Trump. So combine that with the lower enthusiasm for Joe Manchin. They're all going to be safe margins, but maybe a couple of points under what you would typically expect. Nevada, that would be a competitive state like it is, but I have it as a lean for Joe Manchin. I just can't see Mike Pence doing well here in Washoe County, Clark County. I think Joe Manchin would do better. The red Trump counties, they're going to stay home a little bit. Joe Manchin's going to win this by a few points. Idaho and Utah, those will still be safe for Mike Pence. Arizona, that will be a lean for Joe Manchin. Similar to Nevada, Manchin would probably do pretty well these days in Maricopa County. And Mike Pence, he's going to be a little bit too far to the right, while also mostly avoiding that populist kind of appeal that Trump had. Montana and Wyoming, safe for Pence. Colorado, that will be safe for Manchin. Some voters are going to stay home in Colorado because Manchin, he's just too moderate, but in the end, he would still win it by 10 to 11 points. New Mexico, that will be likely for Joe Manchin, mid to high single digits. North and South Dakota, safe for Pence. Nebraska at large, safe for Pence. The 2nd District, that I have as a likely for Joe Manchin. I think he would do well in that kind of district, being considered more moderate. Mike Pence, he's kind of an establishment, typical Republican from 10 or 20 years ago. He would have done all right here back then, but nowadays, Joe Manchin would win this by high single digits. Now, the 1st District, which is around Omaha, that I have as a likely for Mike Pence, just under a 10-point margin, but I think Joe Manchin would have enough appeal here to take it out of the safe column. Kansas, that will be just under 10 points, likely for Mike Pence. Oklahoma will be safe for Mike Pence. Texas will be likely for Mike Pence. There's enough evangelicals in Texas to keep Mike Pence over a 5-point margin. Some of the progressive spots in Texas, they're going to stay home. They're not going to come out for Joe Manchin. So I still think Texas would stay likely. Minnesota, on the other hand, would be likely for Joe Manchin. Mike Pence, he's not going to do much up here. Joe Manchin, he's not that exciting, but he would win that by 5 to 10 points. Iowa will be likely for Mike Pence. I think Joe Manchin has enough appeal here to keep it out of the safe column, but Mike Pence is still going to win that easily. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, safe for Pence. Up to Wisconsin, that will be lean for Manchin. Again, Mike Pence, he's kind of straight out of the Republican playbook from 2 to 3 decades ago, and those kinds of candidates did not do well in Wisconsin. Even though the state has shifted a little bit toward the right, Pence, he lacks that populist appeal. The Trump base, they're not going to come out for Pence. Manchin wins this by a few points. Illinois will be safe for Joe Manchin. Michigan will be lean for Joe Manchin, probably 4 to 5 points. Mike Pence being from neighboring Indiana, from a fellow Rust Belt state, that might keep it out of the likely column, but I still think Joe Manchin would do better here. and Mike Pence is not going to get it done. Indiana, Mike Pence's home state, will be safe for him there. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, safe for Pence. Down in Florida, Joe Manchin is considered more moderate. That might help him a little bit here. Again, as I've said, the Trump base, they're going to turn out a little bit less. But given the trend of the state, I think Pence would still win it by a lean margin. Up to Georgia, given the trends of that state, around Atlanta, they're definitely not going to vote for Mike Pence. Georgia would be a lean for Manchin. That could even get up to 5 points. South Carolina, this one would be a very low double-digit margin, safe for Mike Pence. It's a Sunbelt state, and it's a red state, but the conservative nature of Joe Manchin would peel off some of those Republican voters, and it could be a little bit more competitive than when Donald Trump was on the ballot. North Carolina, tough call for me. Went back and forth on it, but I settled on a tilt for Mike Pence. Let's go up to Ohio. That will be likely for Mike Pence. Given the trend of that state, Mike Pence from neighboring Indiana would still win it by over 5 points. Of course, Joe Manchin is from neighboring West Virginia. He's probably going to have a little bit more appeal there than a lot of other Democrats, but it would still be over 5 points for Mike Pence. Now let's talk about West Virginia. That would be Joe Manchin's home state. After thinking about it, compared to Mike Pence, I still have it as a safe for Pence. In a lot of ways, I think these candidates would be indistinguishable from each other. But I think the state is just so extremely red on a presidential level, and even though Joe Manchin, he's won some elections as a Democrat, culturally the state is just way too far to the right, and I think it would be close. I actually had it as a likely, but I still switched it back to a safe margin, just over 10 points for Pence. Let's go up to Maine, at large, likely for Joe Manchin, high single digits there. The first district, that's very blue, safe for Manchin. And the second district, that's a lot redder, but Mike Pence is not the right guy for that district. He would still win it, but it would be low single digits. New Hampshire will be lean for Joe Manchin. That could even be likely because Mike Pence, he's just not going to have enough appeal there. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., all safe for Joe Manchin. Some of those margins will not be as wide as they would be with someone like Donald Trump and Joe Biden on the ballot, but Mike Pence is too conservative. His cultural values are not going to do well in the Northeast. Let's go to Pennsylvania. That will be a lean for Joe Manchin. Similar to Wisconsin and Michigan, even though these states have trended toward the right compared to 10 or 20 years ago, Joe Manchin, he would win over enough of the suburban voters. He would have success in Pennsylvania, probably 4 to 5 points. And finally, the last state is Virginia. That will be a likely for Joe Manchin. And that is my map, and that would result in 235 electoral votes for Mike Pence, 303 for Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin would win this. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. Obviously, this matchup is never going to happen, and we have no idea what kind of issues these candidates would make the centerpiece of their campaigns. And we don't really know what the turnout would be. We don't know what would happen in the suburbs with independents. But I went through every state, and I could not find a way for Mike Pence to win this thing. Joe Manchin is definitely underwhelming in a lot of ways, but Mike Pence seems to be more from a bygone era. He narrowly won election for governor in Indiana. I think he did fine in that vice presidential debate a couple of years ago. And Joe Manchin, in a lot of ways, he's out of touch in a completely different direction. All those things considered, I think Joe Manchin would win most of these states. You can maybe make a case in a couple of states that they could flip, but I don't think Joe Manchin would lose this race. The margins might be different. So this is what I settled on. Let me know in the comments. Do you mostly agree with this map? Do you disagree on some of the margins? That's fine. Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this channel, on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video.